But let's get into our first topic then. And the Prime Minister has carried out a high-risk reshuffle of his cabinet, sacking Suella Braverman and bringing back newly ennobled David Cameron as Foreign Secretary. Now, critics say turning to the former Prime Minister has undermined Sunak's claims that he is focusing on change. Allies of Braverman in the Tory right are already brewing a revolt, with many angry at the return of the pre-Brexit moderates to senior positions. And there have even been growing calls for a general election, including from former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries. So what do you think? Is it time for a general election? Get your calls in now, 0207 862 2222. Esther, I'll start with you.
No, because I don't think the country can stomach it. I just want to end 2023 on a decent note. We've had a lot of chaos this year and last year. I do think that the strongest case for a general election would have been last year with all the kind of chaos with Boris and the fact that we had so many changes. But at the moment, I don't think, a cabinet reshuffle is enough of a reason to actually call for a general election. The government has to be in a state where there's absolutely no confidence for it to even function. We know that 51 Tory MPs are not going to stand for re-election next year. So obviously the writing is on the wall. It doesn't look like the Tories are going to salvage any sort of hope before the next election. But at the end of the day, we have to think about what's in the best interest of the country, and it's just about having a government that functions decently. I do have a problem with these sorts of cabinet reshuffles, how frequent they are. You couldn't run a pub the way we run our government. I think it's so disrespectful to the British public that you can have a cabinet minister in post for months or weeks at a time, and that's somehow acceptable to actually run the country.
OK, but so far you've said that the current government couldn't run a pub and the writing's on the wall in the next general election, so why not?
No, because this is nothing new. Cabinet reshuffles happen all the time. I've always made the case that if you're a cabinet minister, you should be in post for at least 2 years, right? That rarely happens anymore. But the overarching point is, I don't think we should call a general election lightly. I think the strongest case was last year, but we didn't do that, and I just don't think the country needs that right now.
David Cameron had his first cabinet meeting today, and I think we can see some pictures of that. There he is, sitting there looking very serious. He means business. Now, some would criticise Rishi Sunak for bringing David Cameron back for many reasons, but I suppose primarily and on the surface, does it look like Rishi's out of ideas?
Absolutely. And that's why I think we have to have a general election now, because, that cabinet picture looks like it could be from 2018, 2019. You've got Gove, you've got Hunt, you've got Sunak, you've got Cameron, who had to be specially ennobled by the King yesterday so that he could serve in this new cabinet. This is the last roll of the dice for this failed and failing government, and we should have a general election now. I mean, with Sunak's reshuffle, he's already started the firing gun on the next general election. We obviously don't know when it's going to be. Could be May, could be October, could be as late next year. Could be as late as January in 2025. Probably it will be next autumn. But let's have it now. I mean, how much longer do we have to wait to vote these incompetents out of office? This government has failed and failed. You have to question. It's not just about them, though. And Rishi is an unelected prime minister.
Yeah, I accept that, but that's the way our system works. You have to also question whether the opposition is even ready, right? If you're talking about calling for a government, obviously calling for a general election, there has to be a replacement, right? You have to have a viable option. We don't know what the Labour Party stands for. They haven't published their manifesto. You couldn't tell their position on virtually anything. That also matters, right? You don't want to jump from the frying pan into the fire. So that's something that you have to take into consideration. Look, I don't have a lot of confidence in Rishi Sunak or what he's doing right now. I actually laughed when David Cameron came back because I thought it was a joke. It's like the throwback. Nobody asked for. It's like someone bringing back like Westlife or the Spice Girls. I'm like, look, I don't want to see middle-aged women in bum shorts. Okay,
I'll take a return of the Spice Girls.
The time has passed. But at the end of the day, we just have to grin and bear it, because the interest of the country is at stake here. We just don't need that right now.
OK, I'm going to go to the calls now. John from Kent, what do you think? Do we need a general election, or do you have faith actually in this new cabinet?
No, I think we need a general election. I think it's time for them to go.
Is it fair to say, though, we need to give Rishi Sunak a chance? We've heard in the last few weeks that actually this short-term policy making that we've seen over decades in this country is not working when it comes to our infrastructure like the NHS or railways, that we actually need some longer-term planning. So this just cutting and going every time we've got a Prime Minister making a decision we don't like doesn't work.
Yeah, I think the British public, Storm, has had enough.
Well, certainly the British public aren't happy, but every time we're not happy, do we need a change? Sometimes you have to break things to make them function better.
Definitely need a change. We need a change, and whether Labour...
Now Foreign Secretary.
Pardon?
Well, you've got your change. David Cameron's now Foreign Secretary.
Oh, God, that's, to bring him back, I mean, does that not tell you how desperate they are, how bad things are?
Do you know what?
They make him, they make him a lord now. That, that's jobs for the boys again.
Well,
he's been sitting there for 7 years doing nothing. Now he's a lord.
Okay, but I think as a former Prime Minister, that was probably always bound to happen.
But it shouldn't be allowed to happen, Storm. It shouldn't be allowed.
Okay, well, what?
These people should not be allowed to come back in and make money. I mean, there this morning, I don't know what you noticed this morning on Good Morning Britain this morning, where Nadine Dorries is telling you that it's not Rishi Sunak or David Cameron or anybody else that's running the country. It's people inside Number 10 with money.
Well,
and it's always been the same. It's just like America.
But Nadine Dorries would also bring Boris Johnson back quite happily. So, so I know, which I can hear already in the tone of your voice.
I think,
So would you say that
if they brought Boris Johnson back, I think half of the British public would top themselves.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. We don't want that to happen, John. But when it comes to David Cameron, then, do you just not have faith? Did you not like him as a Prime Minister?
No.
Got you.
John, also, David Cameron was the architect of Brexit. I mean, I know we shouldn't mention the B word too much, but he was the architect of Brexit. I absolutely hold him responsible for the division and the discord in this country that has followed ever since.
Was he the architect?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was because he allowed it to happen because in his party manifesto he said there would be a plebiscite. He said that he would go to the country, and then he did go to the country.
So the country voted, so it is what the country wanted.
And then the campaign that he was supposed to be heading to say no to Brexit was so lacklustre and awful that we're in, the current discord and we have now.
We shouldn't go down the Brexit route because I do think it can get quite patronising because it was a vote and people did vote for what they wanted. But at the end of the day, I do agree that bringing back David Cameron just reeks of desperation.
Interesting. John, thank you very much for your passionate call. Sylvia from Durham, what's your views? Do we need a general election now, or do we need to let this cabinet run things through and see whether they can make the improvements and hit some of those pledges that Rishi Sunak said that you would hit?
Yeah, hi Storm, how are you doing?
I'm grand, thank you, Sylvia. What's your thoughts?
Good. Yeah, I do think that they should have a general election, and the reason I think that is because the Conservative Party over the last few years have changed their PM so many times, it's unbelievable. As far as Ellen Brown is concerned, she spoke so disrespectful about human beings who are less fortunate than most of us. As far as David Cameron's concerned, I actually don't have a problem with him. I don't think he should have been brought back into government because he walked away with it spitting his dummy out because he didn't get his own way with Brexit. I was on his side because I didn't want to go into it.
Sylvia, I put to you then that Rishi Sunak is not changed, so we're not changing PM again. Suella Braverman, he kicked to the curb, so she's out. And David Cameron, the one that you had less to complain about just there, is in. So surely this is good news for you then, Sylvia?
Not really, because I do believe that it's time for our general public, the people of this country who keep this country going, I do believe that it's time for them to have their say on who should be running the country. Because at the end of the day, the Conservative Party have ruined, totally trashed our National Health Service. We've got children, we've got elderly people going hungry and cold. We've got people who are losing their homes. And all this is since the Conservative Party have been in power. So there is an awful lot that they have not done very well.
I hear your complaints about the Conservative Party. Do you have faith that the Labour Party will be able to improve things?
I'm not too sure about that. I think that they should have a chance to try and prove that things can be better for the ordinary working man in this country.
You are not for better the devil you know then. Sylvia, thank you very much for your call. Jeremy from Liverpool, what's your views on a general election? Not another one?
Not immediately. We need to get our electoral system sorted out properly first.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. You're going to have to repeat that. The signal sort of dropped out. Jeremy, what were we saying?
Yeah, we need to get our electoral system sorted out properly first because we've got a undemocratic mess of an electoral system. So let's get the electoral system sorted out first. And amazingly enough, There was a bill to do that in 1867, which was voted down by the Conservatives. So there's no reason. So just bring back and.
But what
get
you're
everything.
He said 1967.
okay, so you're going back a little bit, Jeremy, but I'm hearing that your complaint is actually our political system and how we vote people in. So you don't think that the Tories should have got in. First of all, you don't think they should have got in 13 years ago?
Well, they've only got this massive majority, so-called, which Sunak has inherited. It's based on 29.3% of the electorate, so less than 3 in 10 of the electorate. And I can see you're looking sceptical. Believe me, I've done the math. I'm with it. That is basically there's a number of people who can't be bothered to vote. I can understand them perfectly, and the fact that they got the.
I'm gonna pause you there for 2 reasons. The signal is absolutely terrible, and I can hear you bringing up numbers. So terrible maths and terrible signal makes for a very confused presenter. But I hear your point. You don't like the political system. You think that needs to be changed before we go for a general election. And I think many people might agree with you. Maybe it's a debate for another day. But at the moment, I think we're really focusing on whether the Conservative Party are imploding. On the bringing back David Cameron and getting rid of Suella Braverman, do you think that Rishi Sunak has actually caused himself more bother with revolts happening in the party now?
No.
His own party?
No, actually, I think this was a masterstroke by Sunak to bring Cameron back in terms of the PR. And the front of all the newspapers today was not Suella Braverman, it was Cameron. And it was amazing that this news didn't leak. I mean, Downing Street is more leaky than the storm drains outside. And this news absolutely didn't. Cameron was smuggled into the back of Downing Street
through a drainage pipe.
that didn't leak. But what was so interesting is the news didn't leak. And actually, what's been interesting is that we understand that this appointment of Cameron has been in the pipeline, more drain sewers, for at least a couple of weeks. And because so many Tory MPs have complained to the Chief Whip about Suella Braverman. This was not actually, all of this predated what she said in the Times last week about that incredibly inflammatory language that she used about the hate marches.
What's that phrase, act in haste, repent in leisure? Is that it? I mean, the thing is, if you look back at why Rishi Sunak resigned from Boris's cabinet last year, he said that Boris's antics were basically distracting from the government's mission. That's why he originally resigned. And that's what Suella Braverman was doing now. All of her antics were distracting from what the government was trying to achieve. But we could see that happening. She was always that candidate.
But the fact that he had already got that in the works shows that perhaps he was stronger than people were giving him credit for. Peter from Sheffield, what's your views on this?
Well, to tell the truth, I think we should have regular general elections. The type of governments we elected, I mean, they're just like Monty Python. They're an absolute joke. They're working on the streets of Manchester in a bad winter.
So, Peter, you wouldn't really be for a general election because you wouldn't have much hope on who we would put in anyway?
To tell the truth, you see, I hate governments getting into wars. I've taken millions of people to wars. And I hate the arms trade. I don't know why we do not have an international peace treaty. And all MPs should sign a peace treaty. So that all over the world, government should do that. We should have an international peace,
that would be lovely, Peter, but at the moment we have 2 very heavily publicised wars going on that David Cameron now is going to have to deal with. And actually, we had Dr. Sally Hassan on yesterday. She has worked for the military, and when she was out in Syria, she thought David Cameron, although not a fan of his politics, thought he did very well when it came to foreign politics during his time. Peter,
being a foreign secretary is quite a ceremonial role anyway. He's not going to have...
No, I disagree.
It's
one of the big ministries of state.
It is one of the big ministries, but it doesn't...
He's a big hitter on the international stage, so I think it'll be good for the UK.